from one of the flying boats reporting the fleet. The timestamp on that report was like midnight of the preceding night. And so this sighting report had been delayed by this unconscionable number of hours. And when informed of this fact, Spruance's response was, "Well, that's too bad, isn't it?" And that was the end of it.
Yeah, well, what are you going to do, right? Yeah, that's great. He had a way about him. Like I said, he's a fascinating study in leadership. And you think of Halsey, you think of Patton, and you look at the dichotomies between. And it is funny in history how two people of two very, very different personalities and approaches can be incredibly successful. I think Halsey and Spruance are a great example of that. I think Patton and Eisenhower are a great example of that. They're just completely different. You've got prima donnas and you've got people that are just focused on getting the mission done. And yeah. Anyway, there's a lot to be said for that. In fact, one of my better friends who was a West Point graduate, when we were working together, I said, I don't know how we're going to be able to work together. I said, you're from New York, I'm from Boston, you're Yankees, I'm Red Sox, you're Army, I'm Navy. And he wrote back, and he actually said, or he wrote back specifically about Patton and Eisenhower, and then finished it by saying, well, now understanding that you're from the Navy, why don't we start with Tom and Jerry as a better reference? And I didn't have a good response to that. So anyway. All right, so let's bring it home here. I know I went out of order a little bit in terms of the books, and the interesting thing I thought, and I read Service, and knew Marcus Luttrell from Lone Survivor and all of that, and but for whatever reason, Jim, I hope you're not mad, I didn't realize you co-wrote the book with him. I don't know how I missed that until I went back and I looked at it and went, well, son of a gun. It was a co-written book. Now, I know he's out in Texas too. How did you guys get paired up?
Yeah, I will never be mistaken for a Texan, but it's possible I fooled him long enough to make him comfortable with the idea of working with me. I've been in Austin 25 years now. I'm a New Englander. I moved down to Texas in 1993, so I've been here 25 years. And I met Marcus. I was asked to moderate a panel with him at the Texas Book Festival. This was when Lone Survivor was just out, and he'd been on national television, but he never appeared at a kind of a live book festival before like this. And I think he was a bit nervous about the experience, and it ended up going, I did my best to make him comfortable, to make him laugh. He's got a great sense of humor. He's a brilliant guy, as well as a incredible warrior and combat veteran. But so we had a great experience there. And I guess it must have been a year later when his publisher approached me about working with him on a second book. They had the idea all kind of shaped out, and he needed a writer to work with. So that was I'll tell you, that was a privilege, and the opportunity to come into the modern era and to see the Iraq War in particular, and Afghanistan. But the second book, Service, is mostly about Iraq. Ramadi, Anbar Province, 2006. His SEAL Team 5. His therapy after the Lone Survivor episode was to go back to a SEAL team deploying downrange, and so he joined SEAL Team 5 and ended up serving as an acting platoon chief in Ramadi, which was about the worst place you could be in Iraq at the time. Yeah. It was the capital city of the insurgency. They'd been thrown out of Fallujah. They'd moved to Ramadi, where they were having their way with just unspeakable brutalities. This is Zarqawi's time, I guess. And, it was just an incredible story of again, I did my best to capture Marcus the way he really is, which is surpassingly humble, tough as hell, resilient as hell. He lives out his own motto, which is never quit. He went to Iraq with a broken trigger, with a broken thumb on his trigger hand, 3 broken vertebrae, and he in workup, he got himself ready to deploy in spite of those limitations, and he ended up playing a really important role. Not so much downrange. He was mostly in the tactical operations center for 5 planning operations, but he had the respect of everybody in that platoon. Of course, he kind of has this way of overawing everybody. I'm not sure if that's the case in the SEAL teams, but he has everybody's respect. And that experience was at once kind of an incredible second act for one of America's greatest warriors, and also a great war story, because on SEAL Team 5's tour, supporting the Marines and the Army, and everybody's read about Colonel Sean McFarland and what they did in terms of counterinsurgency in Anbar province in 2006. Mm-hmm. They turned around that deployment. On that deployment, Iraq turned around. There was hope that Iraq could become a functioning country again because of the acuity with which they pursued the counterinsurgency mission. And so service is filled with unbelievable combat set pieces as SEAL Team 5 deploys, and in sniper Overwatch missions. There's any number of incredible stories. Guys like Mike Mansour, Medal of Honor recipient, who jumped on the grenade on the rooftop to save his whole team. Mm-hmm. All these guys, just incredible, incredible case studies, and how kind of uncommon valor is a common virtue, to use Nimitz's phrase, up and down the really up and down the force. And so having a window into the SEAL community was a privilege for me. I relished the opportunity to work with Marcus and to get to know a real American hero.
It was again another well-written book that flowed, and I have to tell you, Jim, I think what was interesting reading that book, and something that for whatever reason I can't get out of my head to this day when I think of that book, and I don't know why I gravitate towards this, but was the chapter when they were still looking for his buddies, after. I guess he probably was still in the village, but the part, I guess, where they had aircraft in the air, and they were trying to, radio Axe and Murph and the rest of the team, and they kept getting this weird static response, right? And even though you're reading this book and you know what happened in Lone Survivor, and you know that Marcus Luttrell was the only one who got out of there, that I found myself, in the cockpit almost reading it, feeling like, feeling that anticipation. Am I actually talking to one of these guys? Do I have them? And even though it's not a big part of the book, for whatever reason, emotionally and whatnot, it was such a compelling, it was almost like I said, even though you intellectually know he didn't find them, you're almost sitting there going, what's going to happen next? It was incredible the way you wrote that out. I can't stress that enough. It was amazing.
Well, thank you. And let me just say, the idea of the book initially was to pay tribute to the other service branches. Mm-hmm. The idea of service, so it wasn't necessarily going to be a second memoir. It kind of became a second memoir from Marcus's point of view when both of us realized how deep his experience, how deep on the page we could make his experience in Ramadi. But that part of it, revisiting Red Wing in that episode, was the fruit of the cooperation we had from the Air Force A-10 pilots who conducted the combat search and rescue. So Zero in the book, Brett Waring, was Sandy 1 that night when they were going in to get Marcus out, and when they were trying to authenticate him. And the discipline of Air Force combat search and rescue, I mean, the Sandy pilot tradition goes all the way back to Vietnam and maybe Korea, right. but it's an incredibly challenging discipline, and it's all about, it's a first responder mindset. These guys are rescuers, and they deploy, in this very tightly controlled system, where they set up Sandy 1, Sandy 2, Sandy 3, and they each have very distinct roles about authenticating the target, suppressing the enemy, and enabling the helicopters to get in and out of there and bring the target home. So Marcus's rescue it wasn't clear to him at the time he wrote Lone Survivor. He had no idea what these guys had done. He hadn't met them yet, hadn't talked to them yet. And so I was able to interview, Spanky Peterson, the Black Hawk pilot who went in and pulled them off that ridge, an incredible feat of airmanship. Mm-hmm. The A-10 pilots covering, kind of flying on Overwatch, if you will. And the details of that combat search and rescue operation were being given to me, in interviews, which I did in person and also on the phone over a period of weeks. At the same time, they're writing the script of the Lone Survivor movie, and I'm thinking, don't the movie makers need to know this stuff?
Yeah, they took it in a very different direction, unfortunately. But
well, they did. There was plenty of good material in Lone Survivor, and Marcus knew what he knew when he wrote that book. But boy, we really added to the Lone Survivor story in Marcus's second book, Service. It's worth reading for people who want to know more about Red Wings, Operation Red Wings, which was the mission that went south in Lone Survivor. It really is. We bring it full circle in Service, not only in terms of Marcus's second act, but really revisiting the mission itself in Afghanistan.
Yeah, like I said, it's for whatever reason, it just when I think of this book, I can't get past that in terms of even the I guess the ice in your stomach and whatnot as they're trying to find these guys. And again, it was like you're there, and you can feel the anticipation. And yeah, I don't mean to be a broken record, but that's this. It's funny how different things impact you. A lot of the other stories in that book were equally fascinating and incredible, and really, I think, are a tribute to not only the SEALs, but the Delta guys and everybody else and if I remember too, he talks about his family history. And
oh yeah.
So I mean, there's a lot to it. It's been a while since I've read that one, but like I said, it's as I get older, the sequences within books and so forth, always get a little bit skimpy, but that's what happens. But hey, Jim, man, thank you. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you taking the time to speak with me and to be able to share all of this. And what I'm hoping, boy, I'm really hoping, is that the people that have not caught on to your works will, and I can't recommend it highly enough, and we'll definitely work hard to make sure that as many people as possible get exposed to the brilliance of your writing, and also in recognition of the incredible people that you write about. It really is a remarkable skill set that you possess, and I'm glad that you've been so successful with it.
Well, thank you, Ken. That's extremely kind of you on all fronts, and it's a reflection of all those guys we all look back at with such admiration, and I'm grateful for that as well. So thank you.
Oh, no, my pleasure. Anyway, so one thing I'll tell the folks that are listening, I'm working with Jim here to get some signed books, 4 of each of his books signed, and then as we get feedback in and some additional ratings. Again, I don't hunt for any number of stars at all, but I do look for good constructive feedback too as to what we could do to make this program better. We'll definitely get some signed books out to the listeners. And, and I can't, like I said, I can't encourage people strong enough to read any of your books and to really, appreciate the history that you've captured so well and so eloquently. So I wish you all the best, sir. And thank you so much for joining us on General Quarters.
Thanks, Ken. It's been great fun.